Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in our discussion about focus area at Carroll. We're delighted you could spend the time with us this evening. We are here with Allison West tonight, who's the division head at our middle school. She's going to explore more deeply kind of focus area and flex block. What's the difference? What sort of drives the groupings and the segmentations in these? A few housekeeping things just to get us started, which is that this is presentation style, but we welcome your questions. We have disabled the chat. However, we have the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please pose any questions that you have in the chat, in the Q&A button. It's possible that Allison will answer them in the context of her discussion, and if not, we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. Our plan tonight is for Allison to present for about 45-ish minutes and have a few minutes for questions. Should there be any questions that we don't get to, please make sure you use the parentquestions@carrollschool.org email. We'll be happy to monitor that and get back to you with anything we didn't cover this evening. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass this over to Allison.
Thank you, Stacy. And hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for spending the night with me. The middle school at this point is all locked up, so I'm home. So full disclaimer, if a hungry teenager comes barging in here, I do apologize. Okay, so the goal for tonight. I hope that you all leave this time we're spending together today better able to answer these questions. Why focus area? Why do all students across the school have a focus area class? The other divisions offer other classes. Middle school has science and history. Lower school science is a multi. So why is focus area a constant? What do they look like across divisions? Are they similar? Are they different? In what ways do we use data to inspire our decisions? By now, you probably know that we love data, and some might say that we're obsessed with collecting data. So I hope to share some more insight into how data helps us make these important programmatic decisions. And then finally, I'm going to end tonight with a very quick snapshot of a student experience just to show how this might look in real life over the course of a several-year experience. Okay, so why do we schedule focus areas? Well, first and foremost, this is one major way that we can GEC or give each child what they most need. And focus areas at Carroll really allow us to offer what is sometimes referred to as a double dose of instruction in a particular area of need. We are able to target and tailor those interventions based on the student or students in each class in really profoundly meaningful ways. And we know that in order for our students to close the gap, they actually need to be making more than a year's worth of growth in a given year. And focus area classes allow us that dedicated block of time each and every day towards making that meaningful progress. And here's the best news. Kids don't have to miss another class in order to get that instruction. There is no such thing as a pull-out service at Carroll. These focus area classes are actually baked right into every student's schedule. Many of our students tell us about how in their previous environments, they may have been pulled out from another block to receive an intervention like this. And we know it disrupts learning in other areas. It leaves students feeling stigmatized and isolated. And it ultimately limits long-term goals. And so our model of focus areas really prevents all of that from happening. Now, as with most things at Carroll, we use data to inspire our thinking and all of our decision making. And so one data point that I wanted to share as it relates to perhaps why we continue to enhance our focus area model here is on this slide. So we're going to go backwards a little bit before we go forwards. Back in 2022, national data was collected on reading and math scores. And at that time, it showed the largest decline in math and reading skills over COVID since 1990. And so we thought, what does our Carroll student data look like? And so we looked into that and we really dug deep. And our data was very promising. Our students made typical and actually in some cases better than typical progress in both oral reading fluency and on measures of Track My Progress. Now, while our data did show that the rate of progress did slow as we moved into remote learning, our students on average maintained skills and most importantly did not regress. So while the national assessment data was showing kids had some of the most significant regression from since 1990, our students did not. And I share that with you because one of the tenets and one of the most important aspects of how we designed our COVID academic program was to very much preserve our focus area model. And so it's important that we continue to find ways to enhance that. Now, moving to the next slide, how does it work or why does it work? Not even so much how, but why. And I just want to name here that first and foremost, we have a school-wide dedication to ensuring that Orton Gillingham principles truly are everywhere. They guide us in just about everything. And so while most kids are getting direct explicit instruction in Orton Gillingham reading within their focus area class, it is being taught and reinforced everywhere. So they're getting it in that 50-minute block, but it's also really everywhere they go. We are also, as you've heard me mention already, pretty obsessed with using data to inspire the decisions that we make. And data helps us design student schedules in the ways that we have homogeneous ELA and language groupings. We have really targeted focus area classes. And we also have opportunities in Flex Block to provide additional support as needed. Now, that data helps us know the how and what to teach. It also helps us track the growth and the lagging skills that we need to be paying closer attention to. But what's really important for me to emphasize is that focus areas don't work in isolation. They are really and truly an ingredient in the whole casserole that is Carroll. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and some might even say it's possibly the most important factor, is that we truly have some of the most dedicated, highly trained, and compassionate educators that I have ever met. And I promise you, I'm not exaggerating. I have had the incredible, fortunate ability to travel across the country to schools like ours. And I remain just so grateful to work with the colleagues that I do at Carroll. And we generally have educators who choose to stay at Carroll because they have such a deep passion and appreciation for our kids. And they make the choice to dedicate their career to becoming the most skilled educator of students with dyslexia. So every teacher, regardless of the content they teach, really is treating all of their classes like a focus area. So while we do have, as I said, these focus area classes that make up an important part of your student schedule, it is really just an ingredient in the overall casserole. So now I just want to narrow the focus back to focus areas for a moment. Most of our students across all three divisions are in a language-based focus area. You might hear it referred to as an LFA. Here at Carroll, we love acronyms. It's sort of the alphabet soup of acronyms here. And if you were to just Google language development or literacy development, you will find a treasure trove of images and articles. And the most important point in all of the information that you might find is that language or literacy development is really just that. It is developmental. It is a developmental process that requires the acquisition of very specific skills in a particular progression, as shown here in these two pyramid models. We have a written expression and a reading comprehension pyramid. And all of the blocks that make up these pyramids are essential if we want students to become skilled readers and writers. And what research tells us is that there are, in fact, approaches and principles that guide us in designing effective and meaningful instruction to honor this developmental approach. And so, regardless of what division or what grade your child is in, this progression is the same. So, if we have a brand new beginning reader, we need to be paying attention to these foundational blocks. If we have a brand new sixth grader, we are paying attention. And the same is true in our upper school. So, our focus area classes are truly designed to identify, target, and strengthen any potential gaps or lagging skills within any of these blocks in order to really help students form a firm, strong foundation. Now, moving on. Oh, and just to highlight here, just a moment, these foundational skills that I've pulled out here are pulled directly from the National Reading Panel, which found that these 5 pillars are essential to reading. And perhaps you've heard this before, perhaps not, but the human brain is actually, while it's wired to speak and absorb language, to listen to language, it's actually not wired to read. And only 20 to 30% of children learn to read without being explicitly taught, which means that the remaining 70 to 80% need effective curriculum and structured instruction in order to gain those literacy skills and keep track with the progression. And this is where the science of reading comes into play. And this is why Orton Gillingham reading approach is so essential to our program. And as I was mentioning, back in 2002, the National Reading Panel identified these 5 essential components for effective reading instruction, and they include phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And all of these are essential for developing strong reading skills. And really, at our core, our focus areas are living and breathing within these pillars. What you'll hear in just a minute is when we're starting with the very beginning stages, we focus on the phonics and the phonemic awareness, and we progress through. If we head to the next slide and take this a step further, this is likely an image that you've seen before. This is called the reading rope. This was actually originally published by Dr. Hollis Scarborough, and it illustrates just how many discrete skills are needed in order to come together for skilled reading. Now, like we do with lots of things here at Carroll, we did add our own little touch to it. So we have included, and you'll notice this in the purple, the cognitive skills. Now, many folks often think of the skills in the middle, in that red zone, when we're talking about Orton Gillingham. And it is true that phonological awareness, decoding, and sight word recognition are all heavily focused on during an OG lesson in a focus area class. However, there are other essential strands that need to be strengthened in order for people to become skilled readers. And we also know that the gifts of neuroscience and research have really helped us to understand the critical role that certain cognitive skills play when developing language skills. And so you can see here that we've actually added this gray thread. This is an additional thread, and this represents the importance of strengthening students' social emotional skills while also ensuring a sense of belonging. Now, I'm going to talk more about that later, but I just want to note here, students simply cannot learn if they do not feel a sense of safety and belonging. In other words, none of these threads will weave together without it. So what? We really do try to strive to pay attention to all of these threads. And we pay attention to it all day. And it's within these smaller focus area classes where we can begin to build that sense of safety and comfort in taking the risks that are required for deep learning. Now, if we move on, that rope is a terrific metaphor. And our job as educators and as the academic leaders making these decisions, it's really to find those weak, frayed strands in order to strengthen them. And that is the job that we take very seriously when we're defining focus area classes. Now, for us, it can be really easy to see or hear when a student's reading rope is not strong. They may be disfluent. They may have low stamina for reading. We may find their comprehension skills are lagging. The key here is that we are using a combination of leveraging their strengths while also designing that targeted instruction that focuses on building those lagging skills. And this is why focus area classes are so essential to student progress. When designing a student's focus area assignment, we always start by examining their reading, finding those frays in the ropes, and developing a plan for those kids to become truly skilled readers. Now, as we move, OG is an approach. It is not a curriculum, and it is not based on grade levels. All students start at level 1 and move through the sequence. And at Carroll, students move through 4 levels. Levels 1 and 2 are really large, and they contain all of the phonetic structures of the English language. And you can see here some words that illustrate some of those concepts in each of these boxes. As students move into levels 3 and 4, it truly represents a shift. We sometimes refer to it as a morphologic shift. Students begin to learn more about Latin and Greek prefixes, suffixes, and roots. They learn about the meaning of word parts and begin to learn how to read words in meaningful chunks rather than sounding out each letter and sound one by one. What's really beautiful about levels 3 and 4 is it truly offers additional opportunities for building vocabulary and helping students define new words using those Latin and Greek roots and affixes that they learn. And although OG is not based on grade level and our curriculum-based assessments are not standardized, I do like to explain to families that most typically developing readers really have mastered all of the concepts through level 3, generally by the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade. And the concepts that live mostly in level 4, most students aren't going to be exposed to those until high school, but we feel it's important to try and cover as much as possible to be as direct and explicit as possible so that when students do encounter those patterns in high school, they're not brand new. So all of this is to share that although this is not on a grade level per se, I wanted to provide the context that most typically developing readers have mastered the concepts of levels 1, 2, and 3 by 3rd or 4th grade. And that's an important lever for us to understand as we are thinking about how to design a focus area class that's truly going to help a student close the gap. So this next question is, what do they look like across the grades? I'm going to take us through a little snapshot of lower school focus areas, middle school focus areas, and then finally upper school focus areas, and share a little bit about how each division approaches creating these courses for students. So here's the lower school breakdown. All 168 lower school students are placed within an Orton-Gillingham tutorial for their focus area. And you can see that the breakdown here, about 48% of students are in a one-on-one, about 46 students are in a pair, with about 4% of students in a small group of 4. And in addition to their focus block area, the lower school also has a language class, a math class, along with additional time for literacy intervention within a flex block. The next slide shows that the lower school academic leadership team works very closely alongside their OG educators to really create these focus area groups. And while you saw that about half of the students are in a one-on-one focus area, many are ready for a collaborative learning environment. And this is where it gets really exciting. So remember, as I said, there are factors that help us determine when a student is ready for that environment. Now, research also does indicate that pairing or grouping children with dyslexia who share similar learning profiles, it can actually enhance their reading instruction and lead to more meaningful growth. And as students develop their literacy skills and show growth in their ability to self-regulate, and they are better able to maintain and sustain attention and engagement, they are ready to be in a pair or a trio. Now, of course, tailoring these collaborative learning approaches to the developmental stages and the individual needs of the student is crucial to maximizing their effectiveness. But here in this image, we can see two friends who are in a paired tutorial working together to identify word parts. Now, all OG tutorials across all three divisions are working on building decoding and encoding together, from moving from simple to complex stages. Now, this 6-step lesson plan format noted at the bottom of the screen here illustrates the progression of a lesson from starting with that phonemic awareness and the phonograms and moving through words to read, oral reading, shifting to the encoding, what says, words to spell, all the way through the dictation of words and sentences, and ultimately asking students to edit using caps. And this pairing of the reading and the spelling, or the decoding and the encoding, really helps students fortify what they are learning in order to build upon that automaticity. Now, if you recall, I mentioned a little while ago that the human brain is in fact wired for speaking and listening, but not reading. And our OG educators are literally rewiring the reading network in the brain with each lesson. Each of the steps of this 6 plan is activating a portion of that reading network. It's pretty exciting. Now, to highlight this on the next slide, you can see here that the highlighted area of the brain on the bottom right here, Broca's area, with every activity that the OG educator is designing to build phonological awareness, your children are activating and strengthening this particular area of the brain, which is a part of that reading network. And they are turning those pathways, which might be described as country roads, into ultimate superhighways. And if you remember, phonological awareness is one of those pillars, one of those foundational building blocks. And truly, without this skill in place, learning to read is not easy. And for some, it can feel impossible. And so it is so critical as a part of our lower school, and frankly, middle and upper as well, OG tutorials, that these exercises and these activities are really fortifying skills. Now, when we move into middle school, you're going to notice a little bit of a shift. There's more slices to the pie here. And here we have 235 students who are split into 6 categories overall. Now, in the middle school, a large majority of students are still in an Orton-Gillingham-based focus area. But many of our students in the middle school are ready for the next step. So while you saw close to 50% of lower school students in a one-on-one OG tutorial, in the middle school, we have about 16% of students in a one-on-one. And 30% are in a two-on-one. And as students move into groups, sorry, let me point out here, we have 3-on-1 is about 23%. AOG stands for Advanced Orton-Gillingham, and that is students who are working on levels 3 and 4. And as students move into those upper levels, they're ready for small group work. and many of the students are ready to include a dual focus. So that the next slide here breaks down a little bit further that the advanced OG covers those upper levels, the levels 3 and 4, that's really leaning into the Latin and Greek morphology. And once students, these focus areas, as I mentioned, will often include a dual focus. And so they might include and integrate more opportunities to develop oral reading fluency. There may be a comprehension component where students are really working to build their understanding of a variety of text structures. We're, of course, always looking to build vocabulary and word knowledge. And in some cases, students will begin to tackle and add some additional writing into their focus area. In some years, we've had math focus areas. We've also offered focus areas that are really tailored to build executive functioning skills through project-based pursuits or inquiry-based projects. On the next slide, you'll see here an example of what a student might be covering in an advanced OG, and that's the upper level 3 and 4 group. And here we have an example. This is the unfair ending grid. And once a student learns all of these unfair endings, which frankly don't play nice, they don't look and sound, they don't sound the way that they look, it unlocks so many more tools for decoding and vocabulary. And it provides opportunity for that collaborative discovery with students who are working in small groups. And students realize that they can actually read and understand way more. And just to point out here on the right, this is a word list that at first a student was marking as, I don't know this word, I can't read this word. And then that they drew this animal crunching off that X, because once they actually applied the unfair ending that they learned and they broke those words into syllables, they realized they in fact could read the word and understand them and use them in a sentence. So as students move into these upper levels, it really unlocks additional skills and tools that make reading even more accessible. And lastly here, this is an example of an 8th grade focus area called the Hero's Journey. And the Hero's Journey is a focus area for students who have shown mastery of OG. They're decoding, they've closed the gap with decoding. Their oral reading fluency is average, at least within the average range. And they're really ready to integrate and apply their skills. And while certain advanced OG concepts or spelling practice may be incorporated into this focus area class, they are really ready to be pushed to apply skills for increased automaticity and independence. And so they are building reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. They're working to develop stronger executive functioning. They're managing a project over the course of the year. They're comprehending and evaluating text with scaffolding that's limiting over the course of the year. And really, it's an opportunity for their comprehension and written expression skills to really flourish. And so that is an example of when a student no longer needs to be in an Orton Gillingham tutorial. There are other courses that are designed to build students' needs. And here we have the upper school pie. Now, our upper school educators have their own pie, and we can see a diverse set of offerings that range from one-on-one OG tutorial to small group writing, fluency, comprehension, and more. And the unique needs of a student who's new to us in this upper school environment, it really requires that that team of educators work to creatively design courses each year that are truly tailored to those students. And here's what we know. As students get older and expectations and rigor increase, there still may be those lagging foundational skills. And so these focus area classes are still aiming to identify those lagging skills and to continue providing opportunities for them to continue to grow in those higher level skills that they're expected to be learning as well. On the next slide, we can see that upper school, some examples where I'm going to go through a few examples of what focus area classes might look like in the upper school. And I will say my upper school colleagues are so skilled at offering engaging hands-on lessons that help students build those foundational skills. You know, if you think back to those words that are in the level 1 and level 2 boxes of Wharton Gillingham, they're pretty basic skills. And so these upper school educators are working really hard to make sure that those foundational skills, those lower level 1 and 2 skills, are built in an engaging way, and dare I say, with teenagers, a little fun. It can be a tough job with these teenagers who want to be pushed and learning more advanced concepts. And so these educators are constantly working to find ways to keep them engaged. And our upper school teachers are also continually finding creative ways for their students to practice integrating skills in order to make the most meaningful progress. Our upper school really embraces empower writing. And so for students who are ready for a writing-based focus area, empower writing is integrated across the day there. On our next slide, you'll see a 9th grade example. So in 9th grade, the 9th grade students who are in a one-on-one OG tutorial, most recently they joined a comprehension and writing focus area, and they've been co-teaching this model, and it allows students to collaborate with other students. They are reading borderless together, and they are integrating those strands of writing in LFA. So this is just one of those examples of how our upper school educators are working so hard to creatively find ways to build those foundational skills that are so essential, but in ways where it's developmentally appropriate for a high school environment. And the next slide, thank you, Stacy. So this is a quick snapshot of all the pies from all the divisions. And, the reality is each year the pies in each division change. There's new kids, there's new flavors, there's new slices. And our focus areas are designed to help us identify those gaps in the foundational skills and build a program that is truly designed to optimize growth. And so while there is a scope and sequence in the skills that we need to build in these focus area classes, it changes year to year based on the kids in front of us. And so now I'm going to move on to how do we decide a course for a student, and how do we decide a group? And really, there are so many considerations. In fact, there's far too many for me to list on one slide. We would need a whole nother session to take you through that process. But I do want to highlight 2 important considerations that we make when we're deciding courses and when we're deciding group size. First up, on the next slide, I want to just name, we are so lucky to have a data analyst on staff who can help when we have questions to understand and untangle. And ours, Louisa, she helped me understand this, that in fact, mastery of level 1 and 2 skills are associated with higher accuracy scores on Read Naturally assessment, which is one of the standardized ways that we are tracking student reading. And so what this means is that as students master the first 2 levels of Wharton Gillingham within their focus area block, they are gaining the skills they need to decode grade level text accurately. And so that helps us understand the efficacy of the focus area, whether we stay the course or whether a student is ready for the next step. The next slide shows another important piece of data. And this shows us that as students gain mastery of levels 1 and 2, it actually leads to faster than year-to-year progress on fluency rate of grade level text. And so the blue line that's sort of trending up here and that constellation of dots on the right, those are the students who have mastered levels 1 and 2, and their fluency rate, all of a sudden we see this really impressive spike. And why this is so important is we can't begin to really focus on oral reading fluency until there's a certain level of decoding mastery. And it is essential that we keep track of this, because once a student has achieved the ability to really focus on fluency, then we can begin to build that into their focus area program. And so knowing this information helps us know when a student needs to stay in a pure OG tutorial, or when they're ready to add that fluency component or their comprehension instruction. It also helps us understand if it appears that on the standardized measure, a student is not making progress on their reading rate. One of the first things I will now look at is, where are they in the Orton-Gillingham progression? Because if they have not yet mastered levels 1 and 2, we may not see significant growth in their reading rate. So again, it helps us understand and maybe even predict in some ways a student's trajectory of growth in terms of closing the gap. Now, the next slide, this is a big one, and this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, but I will try to be brief. And this is about resilience. And as we are designing focus area classes and group sizes, resilience is an essential factor. Now, James Nottingham, he's the original creator of the Learning Pit, and it is one of the most widely used models for teaching, and it's been used, for over 20 years. Our very own Amy Dempster helped us to create a Carroll version, so thank you, Amy. Now, I'm going to ask you to just imagine something at home for a moment. I want you to think of a time when when's the last time you had to learn a new skill? I'm going to give you a second to think about that. And I'll share, for me, I was really bound and determined to learn how to knit. I am not a natural knitter. In fact, I can still only knit in a straight line. So if you want a scarf, I am your lady. I will tell you, it was hard, and I experienced this learning pit. And I lived in this pit for quite a while as I was learning to knit. I had to unravel that thread many, many times. I had to start over. The yarn became frayed. I had to get a whole new spool. But I did get to the other side, and I'm pretty proud to say I can actually knit a scarf pretty quickly now, and I don't even have to totally look at my hands anymore. But I had the resilience to get through that pit. I knew that when I got to the other side, I was going to feel really proud of myself, and I was going to have that level of success. We are asking our students every day to learn something new. We are placing them in positions of productive struggle every day, every block, maybe even for some. And so resilience is essential in managing that pit, in managing the discomfort that comes with learning a new skill. And it can be tough. When we are asking kids to be resilient, we are asking them to feel frustration. It can feel really messy. It can feel uncomfortable. But that is truly where the magic happens. It's where we grow. It's where we develop. And when we come out on the other side, we've developed a new skill. And we know that students who do develop resilience have improved academic performance. It improves their mental well-being, their capacity to problem solve, their overall engagement. It supports them in building strong, connected relationships. And here's the best part of it all: resilience can be taught. And so even before we talk about focus area classes, we are always thinking about how to be building resilience, because it is through that process of learning how to be resilient and how to tolerate the discomfort of that productive struggle that students can then begin to learn in a collaborative environment, to take risks around peers, to make a mistake and to fail and learn from that. We have a motto in our makerspace, and it's make, fail, make, fail, make, fail, make, fail. And that is really something that we try to build in our students, this understanding that making a mistake and wrestling around in the pit is really essential to growth. And so those two things, like understanding the data and understanding the correlations of where a student is within their Orton-Gillingham journey and what we can expect in terms of trajectory of growth and fluency, in addition to how resilient are the students in front of us and how are they in managing the pit. Those are two factors that are really critically important as we're thinking about focus area courses and the groupings. And connected to resilience, because this continues to be my favorite topic, here's what we know. Stress and anxiety are alive and well, and they can have a pretty profound impact on a person's ability to show resilience. And so we are constantly teaching students how to have resilience so that they can manage that learning pit. And without that resilience and the strong coping, it can have a significant effect on a student's ability to have sustained attention, to really develop in their perception skills. It has an impact on memory and memory capacity, learning, word finding, and more. And the next slide shows that it truly can hijack the reading and learning brain, which is why developing strategies around resilience and managing that stress is so important. So in order for students to be in a collaborative focus area and to be reading, to benefit from the learning of others, we really need to teach them how to be resilient. It's truly one of the best gifts we can give them outside of learning how to read. And how to harness the power of the learning pit is really an enormous goal for us all. Okay. I'm going to move away from talking about resilience in the learning pit, and I'm going to show you a very brief example of how all of this information might go into thinking about a student's focus area. And I want to just throw out there that for this example, I am going to focus on reading considerations only, but please know that our focus area model includes math focus areas, includes writing focus areas, includes executive functioning focus areas. But for the purpose of this very brief walkthrough, we're going to take a look at reading. Okay, so here we have Ima. Ima is in 3rd grade, and Ima came to Carroll as a new student. And just to orient you to this chart here, this captures some of our assessments. And as you've heard me say already, we are obsessed with data, and we use data in just about all that we do. So our pseudo word decoding here, this row, students can earn a total of 40 points. You'll notice that in the fall, winter, and spring, you will see L1, L2, L3, L4. Those respond to we reference the 4 levels of OG. We also have sight words noted here. Sight words refer to the Fry word bundles. And we are aiming to have students show automatic word recognition of the first 1,000. Encoding is spelling, and students can earn up to 20 points per level. And then we also are taking a look at reading fluency. And this reading fluency line is the only standardized measure we're going to look at tonight. And this is looking at words correct per minute. That's that word up the top. That's how quickly a student is reading. And then those percentages in the parentheses are the accuracy of the oral reading. And for this assessment, students are given a grade level passage. So here we have Ima. Ima came in new and was still working on gaining mastery of level 1 at that time. Over the course of the year, you can see Ima demonstrated clear mastery of level 1, made some nice progress in level 2. gained a couple hundred sight words over the course of the year, and also in the same way showed mastery of level 1 in spelling, with some solid skills in level 2, and was even able to take a level 3 spelling assessment in the spring. Important to note, the student did arrive really not willing to take risks. It took over the course of the year to see increased confidence and an increased willingness to take those risks, to learn from mistakes, to make a mistake. This is a student who does present with weaker rapid naming skills, which we know can impact oral reading fluency. A vulnerable working memory profile. The good news here is this data is showing a strong response to the Orton-Gillingham approach. We see slow but steady progress across all areas, especially in that sight word recognition. And of note, as I'm looking at the oral reading fluency measures, that leap in accuracy from 85% accurate to 92% accurate is incredibly impressive. Now, when it comes to oral reading, anything below a 97% accurate really means that the student is making too many errors, and it's likely those errors are impacting the comprehension of the text. Nonetheless, this student ended the spring with a 24th percentile score on overall oral reading fluency. This is a student who was in a one-on-one Orton-Gillingham tutorial for the 3rd grade. And with the progress that we've seen, the trajectory of growth, with the increased confidence, with the increase and steady increase in accuracy, this student is truly ready at this point to be with a pair. If we move on, we can see Ima in 5th grade. And we can see now the data for 5th grade is showing continued growth. By the end of 5th grade, we are seeing mastery of level 1 and 2. And we now know that when we see mastery of level 1 and 2, we should expect to see really nice growth in oral reading fluency development. So I would be especially excited moving into 6th grade what that oral reading fluency is going to look like. That sight word growth is also super impressive. From the time 3rd through 5th grade, completely mastered the first 1,000 sight words. And that is an important distinction. As students master the first 1,000 sight words, it definitely unlocks a big portion of the decoding piece for them. I do want to point out, when we look at spring and fall, granted this is 3rd grade and 5th grade, but this is a student who does have a pattern of noted summer regression. So it is important to note, and it is an important consideration for us, because as we're designing focus area classes, we have to take into consideration automaticity and the ability to retrieve and apply. And that summer regression tells us that there's still more time that's needed. At this point, the student's oral reading fluency continued to grow really nicely. From an accuracy perspective, we're ending the end of 5th grade at 97% accurate, but we're still in that roughly 20th percentile. With the mastery of 1 and 2, though, it's telling us that this is a student who's ready for continued emphasis on oral reading fluency. And so the recommendation for the student for heading into 6th grade was to be placed in a small group advanced OG focus area class, and as quickly as possible, adding additional emphasis on oral reading fluency. And I'm pleased to show you that I'm a student, completed 7th grade, and you can see here has shown in 6th and 7th grade, continued in small groups, was in a small group of 4 students, advanced Orton-Gillingham, moving towards adding a fluency strand to that advanced OG focus area, and then ultimately a comprehension and vocabulary. And this is a student who ended in the spring of 7th grade, mostly mastering all 4 levels in decoding, The spelling is lagging slightly behind the decoding, but still showing excellent gains. And that oral reading fluency score in the spring of 7th grade placed Ima at 64th percentile nationally. And so that means that Ima is reading with adequate speed and accuracy, grade level text. At 162 words correct per minute at 99% accurate, placed Ima at the 64th percentile, which 2 years prior had been the 20th percentile. So again, knowing that mastery of levels 1 and 2 levels 1 and 2 of Orton-Gillingham concepts, that told us that was ready to unlock and harness the power of the fluency instruction, which Ima was able to really capitalize on. So this is a student at the end of 7th grade. Ima has closed that decoding gap and was ready for a hero's journey in 8th grade. And so that, again, is a very, very brief snapshot. I'm going to move to the next slide here. So in closing, focus areas are really one way for us to GEC in really meaningful ways. There is no scope and sequence, but there is a progression, and it is really vitally important that we make sure that we are identifying the gaps and the lagging skills so that we can close that gap as quickly as possible. But also, we have to go as slowly as we need to. There are so many considerations when we're thinking about focus area classes. The list is endless, but literacy skills come first. As you've heard me say before, our focus area options do broaden, and they do include other areas like math and comprehension and vocabulary and writing, but we are really focused on getting the reading first. Number 4, data guides and inspires us. It's not the end all be all. It is not the only thing we use, but it does help us and make these really important decisions for all of our students across all 3 divisions. And the next, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that collaborative learning is the goal. When we can get students learning together, it really helps optimize that time, and it optimizes our ability to build skills even outside of the literacy realm. And again, this tolerance for productive struggle and the resilience in the face. Oh, a typo I just noticed. Well, that's okay. I guess I can't be perfect, right? But this resilience in the face of challenge, this is where that growth really happens. And so it's important for me to just continue to remind all of us that yes, the reading, the writing, the math is important, but so is helping students really manage how to be resilient and how to navigate that productive struggle. I really appreciate you listening to me for nearly 54 minutes. That's a very long time. I could go on and on about this topic. I feel really passionate about our focus area model here at Carroll. But at this time, if there are any questions, Stacy, I'm not sure. I was too busy
Yeah,
just
thank you.
chatting away here.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the great thing, Allison, in speaking for 54 very, very interesting minutes is that you answered the majority of the questions, but just a couple kind of lagging, remaining. This is a difficult one. I'm going to pose it to you, but it's a difficult one to answer in general terms. But there's a question around how long it generally takes to get through each level, and if there's an expectation by grade X, are you at level Y?
That is such a good question. And it's a question that I get multiple times every year. And I wish there was an easy answer. Trajectory of progress can be predicted, but it is not an exact science. There are just like there are so many factors that go into identifying and designing programming for kids. Trying to predict how long it will take to close the gap is also very complex. So working memory capacity, processing speed, attention, engagement, resilience, all of these factors really help us understand how quickly a student may close the gap. Now, the question about is there a grade by which? There is no sweet spot. I mean, certainly I do like to tell families, and I mentioned this earlier, that generally a typically developing reader has mastered those first three levels by the time they're in third or fourth grade. So the further we're getting away from that third and fourth grade benchmark, that means that it's a wider gap to close. And so, of course, like early intervention, the earliest we can intervene, the better. But I have to say, I am every day, I live in the middle school land, but I'm also very fortunate to be close with our upper school educators. They are incredibly talented at helping those older students who still do present with gaps in the foundation. They are incredibly skilled at helping students close the gap as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much. I'm going to answer one quick question and then ask you another one. We are recording this, so this video will be available. We'll put it up. It'll be in the Thursday update, and there'll also be a link should you want to send it to others. So Allison, you kind of teed up the next question around, we have some prospective parents who are considering Carroll on the call, wondering, is it ever too late and what do you do? And again, we have a bias for early intervention, less to unlearn, less to unpack, but would love to hear you talk more about that.
It is never too late. No. In fact, I have been fortunate to work with mentors who were tutoring adults. The beautiful thing about Orton Gillingham as an approach for reading is that it is based on the science of reading. Our brains were simply not wired to read. And for many individuals, it requires a level of direct, explicit instruction in order to rewire the brain in that way. The leverage that we have here through our focus area model is we can be very individualized and very direct and explicit. So when we have a new 6th, 7th, 8th, or even 9th grader who's coming in and really still working in that level 1 range, there is a whole lot of hope and possibility because the Orton Gillingham approach truly is designed to do all the things that need to happen for that individual to learn how to read.
Thank you so much. We've gotten several other questions, and I think it's too big a topic for us to kind of delve into, but more about the sort of intersection of the TCI and Orton Gillingham and the Carroll curriculum. But I think what I'll do instead is kind of tease up that next month, we're going to have some members of the TCI team report out kind of on data-informed instruction at a deeper level. So we'll be sending that out and kind of tee it all up for you. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined us. It's a busy week. It's a busy time. Thank you to Allison. As always, I learn from you each and every time.
I'll tell you, Stacy, I could say one quick thing. I feel very passionate about TCI too and the intersection of OG.
I was hoping.
So maybe I could just say, and maybe this will
Fantastic.
interest folks in coming to the next talk, but I get that question a lot too. And the way that I liken that the intersection or the importance, again, you heard me say like focus area is one ingredient in the casserole. TCI is another ingredient in the casserole. And I see targeted cognitive intervention as an opportunity for us to look under the hood. We get to literally peel back the skull a bit and identify which of these pathways that are so essential to learning, which of these pathways are underdeveloped. And how do we create an intervention that is going to open those pathways up so that all of the research-backed instruction can filter through those pathways and strengthen them. And so it's a combined effort on the part of TCI and the instruction. How was that?
That was fantastic. That was fantastic. So thank you again. It was so interesting to sort of think about all of the variables that go into designing a focus area, to look at the progression and to think about how this can be applied even if you're at level 1 or level 2 in the 8th or 9th grade, and how we move students through that in a way that's sort of engaging and interesting, but also keeping them challenged in grade level ways. I wanted to again thank you all. We'll see you around Carroll soon, and thank you for joining us. And thank you again, Allison, and thank you to Amy Dempster.